Vi finns alltid där med trygghet och råd för...
Fram den. Om du tar där.
Just don't know horses like we do.
I 25 år har vi rekryterat och utbildat ledare, nyexaminerade talanger och seniora chefer i Norden. Vi har utmanat normer, kunder och kandidater. Vi har visat mod och hjärta och försökt hitta nya vägar fram. Det gör vi. Det handlar inte bara om en intervju, en utbildning och ett uppdrag. Det handlar om att skapa ett bättre näringsliv. Nästa.
Sång. Så ni som kan, vänligen stå upp.
Du gamla, du fria, du fjällhöga nord. Du tysta, du glädjerika sköna. Jag hälsar dig värnaste land upp på jord. Din sol, din himmel, dina äng, det gröna. Din sol, din himmel, dina äng, det gröna. Du tronar på minnen från fornstora dag. Då ärat ditt namn flög över jorden. Jag vet att du är och du blir vad du var. Ja, jag vill leva, jag vill dö i Norden. Ja, jag vill leva, jag vill dö i Norden.
Well, the perfect scene set here in Falsterbo with the performance of the national anthem in preparation for the prestigious Nations Cup competition of dressage. The FEI Dressage Nations Cup series coming to its conclusion here at the Swedish seaside venue. And we have our 4 teams lining out for the decisive Grand Prix today. Those competitors, of course, at the 5-star level will go on to either the Grand Prix Special or Grand Prix Freestyle tomorrow, which we will have for you also on Clip My Horse. But here today on FEI TV, we get to watch the culmination of the 2026 FEI Dressage Nations Cup season, a season that started in Wellington in Florida in February, through then the prestigious 5-star in France at Fontainebleau, the 4-star at Lier in Belgium, Hagen in Germany, and now here for the 5th and final leg at Falsterbo. So very warm welcome to Falsterbo for the final leg of the FEI Dressage Nations Cup Series for 2026. Germany, the runaway leaders at the moment, and one of the 4 teams represented here at Falsterbo. Germany, the only nation to have contested every leg so far, including the North American leg in Wellington in Florida back in February. They took the victory at the 5-star at Fontainebleau, also taking the victory at home at the 4-star at Hagen just in recent days. So here, 2 of our teams, Germany and the Netherlands, they have named their horses and riders for Aachen the World Championships. Denmark and Sweden will be naming their teams after this Nations Cup leg here this weekend in Falsterbo. The draw for the nations sees the Netherlands, Germany, Denmark and Sweden come forward in that order in each rotation. We'll see 8 of our 16 contenders just before the judging break. That means we finish with Therese Nilshagen. And then we go through and we've got the likes of former U25 gold medalist Maurice Treffinger. We've got Katrin Laudrup Dufour and the wonderful Mans John Freestyle. And Patrick Kittel, World Cup champion there. Patrick and Touchdown will be our last down the centre line to see how it all plays out. Interestingly, Sweden appeared at the last 2 legs of the series. Denmark have not actually lined out this year yet at all. Our judges then, Magnus Ringmark over at B, Clive Halsell of Great Britain across from him at E on the 2 long sides, Kerr Christensen of Denmark at H, Ulrike Nievler is our president today at C, and Nessa de Leo of Brazil is our judge at M. The Super Show here, let's say just south of Malmo on the Baltic coast, and has played host to high-level dressage for many, many years. And a prestigious place to conclude the series and season of FEI Dressage Nations Cup. Yeah, and we could see a tiny bit of upset here today. We've got probably the Danes looking very, very strong. 3 of our highest rated competitors and combinations, Nadja Oberslot, Daniel Backman-Andersen and Anna Zibridsen. And Therese Nilshagen be the other one of those top 4 rated partnerships with Navarro. So Denmark could easily cause an upset here in the last leg of the series. But of course we do have Patrick Kittel and Katrin Laudrup de Voort, touchdown and Mount St. John freestyle. Of course, very, very difficult to look beyond those 2 as well. Germany, however, are they going to be able to cap the season with yet another win? As I say, I think they are unassailably out in front to become series champions here in Falsterbo today, but we should see. So there is our 4-member Dutch team. Tosca Visser van der Meulen is going to be our first to go here in a moment. Robin Bernowski, Marisha Dijkman and Maria Jose Callis, and limited edition will take the 4th and anchor leg here a little later this morning. So to start our FEI Dressage Nations Cup and to start the Dutch team campaign, Tosca Visser van der Meulen and Jackson. It's a little bit off square in that first halt. Tosca been producing this horse at Grand Prix for several seasons now. They've been winners together at Grand Prix at Crozet, Jiva Hill a couple of seasons ago. And their 2026 scores have been around 64 to 66%. Coming into these very, very steep half passes. And again, it does sometimes look here as well like they're just slightly cheating, they're sneaking the transition there, not quite making it to be, maybe not in this case, pushing all the way over to the board before the transition from right to left. Does square up that halt. Again, it's a little bit leaning back in front for the halt and rein back, and we'll talk endlessly throughout the day about how difficult it is to really nail every aspect for a 10 of a rein back. And here at the Grand Prix level, we talk about it a lot, for instance, in my sport, pure eventing, where the halt and the rein back might be separate. Here, the halt and the rein back, all part of the one movement for 10. Eventually establishing quite a good piaffe, and the piaffe is doubled coefficient. There's a transitions mark, but the is a doubled mark. The transition passage to piaffe could have been a little bit crisper. The horse kind of ran through. Tosca Visser van der Meulen and Jackson just in the walk section of their Grand Prix program. Double coefficient for the extended and, in a moment or two's time, the collected walk. And even with that doubling, there's a significant amount of collected walk to be shown and, more importantly, maintained all the way along this short side, H to C and around to M. And then here, always for me, a critical moment in the test, because that one moment there at M, the upward transition to Piaf, that is its own mark out of 10. So Tosca just sat in there. She was a little bit more deliberate, a little bit more impressing her own desire on how the transition came. Again, I wouldn't say the transition was brilliant, Passage to Piaf, but she probably got a little bit of a stronger, more active Piaf. Certainly if you put the Piafs we've seen together for this horse, you know that there's a very, very good on the line. There's a 7.5 Piaf there for the taking almost all day long when it comes together for them. Nice extended canter, very, very balanced then, coming for the single change at the end of the line. Setting up now for the canter half pass zigzag. Nice single tempi changes, really floating and carrying the pace and the rhythm across the ring. Yeah, unfortunately there with the change on the center line. Just a little bit of anticipation coming into the pirouette. Again, first Nations Cup of the year for Tosca, and whilst this isn't going to go up towards their personal best set a few seasons ago, in terms of the scores they've been delivering this year in their several international runs, this would be amongst the best. It would be the best, in fact, if they stayed at the moment at 67%. So that's a very, very nice thing to deliver for your team. Again, if you're seen to be reliable, seen to deliver or over-deliver on what your results coming into a competition promise, then you can become very, very reliable for a team selection for a Chef de Keeps program. So Tosca, Vis van der Meulen and Jackson then completing their test. Very nice final center line there. Again, lots of 7.5s from our judges. And we're looking at high 60s, 67.9 there, and that could easily translate to a 68% in the final analysis. The harmony marks coming in across the judges. That's the one collective mark that they give at the end of the test as well. And the Nations Cup campaign for the Netherlands off and running. Yeah, and a lot of the times it was the transitions more than the Piaffe itself that was letting them down. It's a little bit of a weakness in their program. But Tosca, Visser, Van der Meulen and Jackson, with those individual judges' percentages, including over 70 from the judge at M, and translating to a 67.978. So not quite cracking the 68% for the Dutch partnership here today. Let's say their best score of the year at Grand Prix, and they do it when they're representing their country here in the FEI Dressage Nations Cup's final leg. It's a very strong team from Germany. Helen Lange-Hahnenberg, Evelyn Eger, Leonie Richter and Moritz Treffinger. And it's difficult to look beyond them, but we do have those very strong scores to come in from Sweden, from Denmark. Denmark probably with the most consistently high-rated team across all four of their combinations. So we shall see. Helen Lange-Hahnenberg and Daniela. Helen, of course, with the wonderful career with the likes of Damon Hill and Damsey. Multiple medalist and Olympian. For Germany. And winner also of the FEI Dressage World Cup Finals in Gothenburg in 2013. This horse, Daniela, 13 years old. Been with Helen right throughout her career. Helen, of course, always very involved in producing young horses. They went to Grand Prix for the first time in October of last year. And their runs this year have elicited a 67 and a 69% in Grand Prix. Actually, a very nice halt and rein back there, as we say. Difficult to get it absolutely right, but a nice square halt. Very obedient, keeping a good outline in the rein back. It shows a nice difference there in the transition up to passage. There's a little bit of anticipation there. You could see as Helen just wanted to keep the passage going for a stride or two more before she really came into Piaffe, that her horse, Daniela, was just offering that sit behind. Lovely activity in the frame. Overall, maybe just the head and neck out a little bit more in front, reaching out and down to a contact. Doesn't look to be a massive difference between the head and neck position between the extended and now the collected walk. But I think the activity and rhythm of those walks are overall going to treat them quite well score-wise in terms of the quality. Yeah, and again, another rider who's just maybe had to slightly change what they do in the transition to try and get it different. And again, maybe it's not totally polished. Maybe it's not something they've tried elsewhere, or they take it from their club of, the bag of clubs, as it were. And it doesn't just quite come off either. You saw them just lose a bit of rhythm and lose a bit of pace in the transition there into Piaffe. The two tempies come up really nice, because overall the general impression of this partnership is a partnership with a lot of time on their hands. It's all very, very relaxed. It's being produced with very, very little fuss and drama. Set for the canter half pass zigzags. Quite an overturn off the line there. I think in a perfect world the judges would just like to see a stride or two straight down that centre line and then establish the exercise that is required. I was really surprised how long she held on before she started riding her one-tempies, because the two-tempies were so languid and flowing, and those were quite short. And obviously that is just her way. Maybe this horse, just with that long, languid flow, when it's one-tempies, that just gets a little bit confusing and they can't keep the rhythm going. So she actually rides the two sets of sequence changes quite differently. Nice opportunity to extend the frame in trot there after the canter work. It gets sevens across the boards from the judges and sets up for this final centre line of Piaf Passage. It's going to be very, very interesting as well here tomorrow to see which riders have opted for the special and the freestyle. Again, maybe better transitions that time, and about their basis in the Piaf as well. I mean, both could probably just come up a point or two to start to make them, a championship partnership. But it's nice to see Helen Langer-Hanneberg in a German team coat once again. She and Daniela completing their test with what looks like it is going to be a new best for the pair, having been about 69.1 as their best score in the past. And as I say, it will also be a considerable step up on their scores at Grand Prix in this 2026 season. So a nice place to do it. Helen, the winner of the Grand Prix here during the Nations Cup back in 2024 with Fakilun. And today scoring 69.283, as we say, a new best for the partnership of Helen Langer-Hanneberg and Daniela. This is actually Helen's first Nations Cup, first German team appearance since riding here at Falsterbo back in 2024. So a very, very strong Danish team. Anna Zibrinsen, Daniel Bachmann-Andersen, Nadja Aboslut and Catherine Laudrup-Dufour taking the anchor leg with Mount St. John Freestyle. Anna Zibrinsen gets the bell from our judge at sea today, Ulrike Nievler, to start what for Denmark and Sweden in particular is a very, very important weekend this summer in the build-up to Aachen, the World Championships. So Anna and Kelfilu starting their own campaign, Denmark's campaign in this Nations Cup, and their last opportunity to nail down their place on the World Championship team for Denmark this summer in Aachen. Anna appeared and was part of the Danish silver medal winning team with Orlando at the Gothenburg Championships in 2017, the Europeans at Ullevi Stadium. Delfalou with from Grand Prix. Actually made their Grand Prix debut here at Falsterbo back in 2022. Nations Cup team riders here in 2023, at Aachen in 2024, and over the course of this winter, top 5 in the World Cup qualifier at Gothenburg for this partnership. Really impressing the judges. There's a lot of 8s coming in here, which again is a pretty strong place to be for the #1 rider for your team, and it underlines what we were saying about how the Danes come here very, very strong. They haven't been to any of the other Nations Cups this year, but they come here to make use of Falsterbo. Perhaps just pushing themselves a little bit out of frame there in that big extended trot. And just struggling to really get the energy and the elevation into that Piaf for the highest marks. We are seeing a 7, but we're also seeing a lot of 6.5s. Remember, Piaf is a double coefficient score throughout the Grand Prix as well. So this is up into quite a positive Piaf, and again that might have been a conscious decision on Anna Zibritsits to try and bring a little bit of that energy into the Piaf. Again, you're looking at a good solid technical execution of Piaf that you just want a little bit more from. Really interesting to see Helen Lange-Hanneberg a moment ago ride her 2 Tempes and 1 Tempes in such different ways with the same horse. You're so used to seeing them being very much the same exercise, approached in the same way. And in terms of an extended canter, you really see, especially in front, this horse reaching out and grabbing the ground. But the punch through behind is also good. I mean, there's a real good extension of the frame there in the extended canter. And yeah, the judges agreeing 7.5s and a couple of 8s. And there's so much going on here in this zigzag with the change of direction, you know, the execution of each transition side to side, the accuracy as well to make sure that you're actually counting the number of strides and that those strides are well placed so that overall the thing looks very elegant and symmetrical. Yeah, unfortunately just not quite nailing the 1 Tempes to the extent that they did the 2s. And actually the Tempes here, a little bit of a chink in the armour for a partnership. You know, they were comfortably cruising up in the 70s, but you can't really afford too many mistakes. And again, with the 1 Tempes as well, in particular being a doubled coefficient score, so too are these pirouettes in the Grand Prix test. course, by the same sire quarterback as touchdown that we'll see with Patrick Kittel a little bit later on. Once again, just a tiny bit stuck and earthbound in that final PF, but the score just back over 70%, which is going to be a nice one to turn in for your team. So our Danish campaign with Anna Zibrinsen on the way with a 70% score. We'll get the exact details in just a moment of what the score is going to be for the number one for Denmark, but that is going to put them, of course, up in front so far. Netherlands, Tosca Visser van der Meulen, 67.9, 69.2 for Helen Lange-Hannenberg's Daniela, for Germany, and Anna Zibrinsen and Kel Fallu now over 70%. We'll just see exactly what the score will be. .174 is what they all have to chase now, as Kel Fallu and Anna Zibrinsen post our current leading score in this first rider rotation of the four teams here at Falsterbo for the FEI Dressage Nations Cup. So just waiting for the trailblazer then for the Swedish team, Bertha Söderberg, to join us. Therese Nilshagen, Anita Roslund and Patrick Kittel making up the team here on home soil. There's Nathorst. And there is Patrick Kittel just on foot in the arch. Keeping an eye on Bertha, his teammate, just coming in to start the Swedish campaign in this Nations Cup leg. So recent focus up here in the region has been the Nordic Baltic Championships, and Bertha and Talento, part of that program, finishing with the silver medal in the freestyle, and the team bronze out of the Grand Prix for Sweden. This partnership also travelled this spring to the CHI in Al Shakab, which is a wonderful opportunity for potential championship horses to get to ride at the five-star level and to experience the flying and the logistics of that. They scored a 69 for top 5 in the Grand Prix out there in Doha.
I sing and now I'm singing to you. You know that thing when it drives right through.
It's very easy to overlook the difficulty of these half passes because they are, very, very steep, and therefore the distance you have to make forward and sideways to be absolutely accurate really is, a high achievement. It's why it's the Grand Prix level of trot half passes.
It's beautiful, she said.
You're not really getting the diagonal pairs there. We're seeing clear resistance to the idea of going backwards, a horse that thinks forward. But actually, conversely, you do need a horse thinking forward as it moves back for a rein back that's worth a 10.
But you don't know I did. Now this is me, though I'm just a small town kid. It's what I am, Jonathan. This is what I do. I write about my life and then I sing and now I'm singing to you. You know that thing when it drives right through. You know that you're okay, but something terrible just happened to you. And sometimes
Yeah, showing a nice bit of relaxing and self-carriage down in the contact out and down, and good activity in the walk as well. So overall, I think a positive moment there in the extended walk for Bertha.
this is what I do. I read about my life and then I sing and now I'm singing to you. You know that thing.
This horse produced right through by Bertha. They've actually had a good few runs since they made their Grand Prix debut in 2025.
Something terrible just happened to you.
Been here at Falsterbo for the 3-star tour as well, and that's worth underlining is just how much competition there is here at Falsterbo across the jumping ring and the dressage ring. More than a week of sport.
Gothenburg last year. Told me you were.
So how brave is she going to be on this extended canter? It looked like she had quite a lot of horse in her hands actually in those two tempies. They ended up maybe going a little bit further up towards the corner than she might necessarily have liked. The 69% scored at Doha this year probably just seems a little bit out of reach, but this is more equivalent to what we saw from them here at Tolbert and also at Strömsholm in the Nordic Baltics just recently. Again, just a lovely picture though of a horse in the extended trot down that long diagonal, setting up for the final centre line. Yeah, comes nicely, a nice passage and actually good transition, good PF. The PF going to get 7.5s, in fact, across, yeah, every single judge. So strong finish there for Beate Söderberg and Talento here in our Grand Prix that will also form the final leg of the FEI Dressage Nations Cup. So just looking back at some of the highlights and replays from Beate Söderberg and Talento's test. Certainly the Piaf Passage, fairly strong and very, very strong on the final centre line for this partnership. And overall we see a 67-3-7-0. So actually splitting the difference between the scores we've seen just recently and that very, very good score in Doha this spring of 69. So 67.3, a good place to be. It is fourth at the moment, which means that Sweden also sit fourth in terms of the teams here in our FEI Dressage Nations Cup at the conclusion of the first rider rotation. So we go back to the top again, and it is back to the Netherlands. So Robin Banowski and Jamaica, the 28-year-old rider who was recently in action in the freestyle at Rotterdam. Scored a 68% in the Grand Prix there in the big ring at Rotterdam, and also rode at the Dressage Days at Aachen this spring with a 67 in the Grand Prix there at the German venue. So Robin and Jamaica here trying to improve the Netherlands' position. The Netherlands, of course, one of the supporters of the FEI Dressage Nations Cup, having appeared at Fontainebleau and also at Leer. An opportunity to pick up good points here today, and in fact a win here today could propel them up to the podium of the series for 2026. Combination potentially on the up as well. 68.217 is their personal best, and it was scored at Rotterdam just at the tail end of June. Very, very accurate halt, but not quite square, and then unfortunately just misinterpreting the signal. The horse steps forward thinking that the nudge is to square up the halt, when in fact Robin was trying to establish the rein back. Does just call out for some friends, but actually doesn't break the contact through much, doesn't break the harmony, doesn't break the attentiveness. Gets set for this upward transition to Passage. Again, we are just slightly in front of that Rotterdam score, so we could be looking at a personal best here. And as I say, what a summer to be on the rise, looking towards those European Championships. Of course, we know the Dutch team, they're not even European Championships, they're World Championships, my apologies. We know the Dutch team for Aachen, but still there's a lot of ground to be made by coming out and improving when it really matters as well for your country, like it does at these Nations Cups. Again, a really just nice, secure, calm set of 2 10-piece. And what Robin's got going from there is that, you know, those half passes really move laterally. So whilst being very accurate to the strides, he's really showing a lot of move either side of the centre line and maintaining the symmetry as well. There's 1 tempo should average out at just a shade over 7. Of course, our 5 judges. Has to reach for a stride or 2 in that pirouette. It's a tiny bit on the forehand rather than sitting and bearing the weight behind. But again, you know, those are the margins that are going to get you up into 8s and 9s. It's quite big, the hind end slightly chasing the inside shoulder about. So just moments away from the conclusion of their Grand Prix. This Piaf Passage final centre line. Really active in front. I think the activity behind just went away a tiny bit during the course of that Piaf, but still going to garner a couple of 7.5s. And again, you know, looking at the couple of 8s coming in on the final centre line, particularly for the Passage work, it's a very, very strong conclusion to the test.
Thank you,
and the personal
Robin
best is going to move up, no doubt about it. Robin Bernowski and Jamaica about to score a new Grand Prix personal best score, and I think just a shade under 70%. So there is that new personal best score, 69.870. It is worth second place on the ranking at the moment. So Anna Zibranson, the number 1 for Denmark, is still out in front of the individual ranking. Our only score above 70% at the moment, 70.174. Evelyn Egger and Global Power. Number 2 for Germany, say Helen Lange-Herneberg, already scoring a just over 69% for the series leaders. See her just using her hands and body to try and lift the horse's frame and really see that surge forward. Global Power, a horse she produced to the World Young Horse Championships 2 years ago. Of course, there's going to be a competition coming up soon on FEI TV, powered by Clip My Horse. Members of the German team at Leer this year. Germany ended up on the podium in 3rd place on that occasion at the Belgian show. That 4-star in Leer, just attracting huge entries every year, just coming at the right time and the right place in the calendar. Evelyn here at Falsterbo last year with her other good horse, Table Dance. Overall, you know, with the Piaf, a couple of those details. Was it super accurate to the centre line? Was it actually maintaining straightness? And both of them, you would say, potentially from our angle, no. I think the judges will see that an awful lot more clearly. And then it's a question of how much those details matter, how much they have to be taken in against the technical execution of the Piaf itself. And inevitably, that push and pull between details and technical execution does kind of land at a 7. Probably a little bit better position this time. Still very strong execution, but still just losing that little bit of straightness to our eye. Get 7s across the board, as you see from the average there of our 5 judges for the 2 tempies. Positive on the extended canter as Evelyn Egger here sets up and executes her counter half-pass zigzag. It was showing over 70% at one stage. At the moment now, she's a little bit still in front of Helen Lange-Herneberg, so she has the opportunity to improve Germany's position. To do so, you certainly can't afford an error. just a little bit of miscommunication there. Horse anticipating one thing as she asked for the extended trot.
When your legs don't work like they used to before, and I can't sweep you off of your feet, will your mouth still remember the taste of my love?
They're just coming up quite a lot above the contact there, not really nailing the transition, and then coming into a very short in terms of the frame and short in terms of the number of steps performed Piaf. So unfortunately, just a few things happening here. This combination, at one stage, Evelyn was getting scores that would be a new personal best for her as a rider. Then for a long time, we were looking at a new combinations best for the horse and rider pair. Unfortunately, they've just slipped behind that as well. Helen Lange-Hanneberg is going to remain the leading German score with a 68.5 or so coming in for Evelyn Ecker and Global Power. So that overall score, 68.522, as we saw it as she was leaving the arena. Our 5 judges leaving her about 0.7% of a new combinations best and becoming the second best of the scores for Germany in this Nations Cup. So Germany posting that latest score. Our leading individual score comes from Denmark, and we go now to the second team rider for Denmark, Daniel Bachmann Andersen and Flash Gordon. Flash Gordon, 12-year-old Grand Prix horse. Started at the Grand Prix level with Daniel last winter in December at Aarhus. Recent winners of the freestyle at Hagen in the CDI competition. That was back in April, with Hagen hosting its CDIO just in recent weeks. Never scored under 70% in Grand Prix, so a good score potentially to come here for Denmark. Daniel, member of the World Championships gold medal winning team for Denmark at Herning in 2022, and Olympian in Paris with Veyron as well. And you see it's a real power to the horse when you watch that extended trot down the long diagonal. And I think more than a lot of other people, Daniel will have done a super job of just really snapping the horse in at the frame. Because as you go past A for that first time down at the bottom of the ring, that's your real opportunity to show the horse's outline to certainly the top 3 judges. Very, very few movements already in this test that haven't seen at least one judge give an 8, and just the absolute floating and elevation of that trot as they came into their halt. Gets the rein back done again. You know, it's one of those things that almost it's become just ride it. Don't pick a fight about it. Don't get at odds with your horse. Just try and execute it to the best of your ability, because, you know, 7s are very, very useful for the majority of people in the sport. Getting over 80% in Grand Prix is a rare accolade that we still really recognize. Of course, traveling that little bit, but you have to look at the quality. Again, a PF that's going to garner an 8 or 2 across the judges. So just over 73, actually not just over, 73.5 practically has been this combination's best. As we go up into the canter, we see whether actually this score is going to grow or not. Nice 2 tempies for the absolute highest scores. You know, I think they could just look for a little bit more punch through behind, but really reaching forward and grabbing the ground in front. And of course, clean, well executed, regular 2 tempies. He just held to really make sure that he got those right down the diagonal, centered across the X, and actually, I think maybe the little bit of extra collection in the 1 tempies really helped that hind punch through as well. Keeps the canter very rhythmical. Yes, perhaps we'd like to see the circle described by the inside hind a little smaller, but absolutely maintaining the quality and the rhythm of the canter. Two strong, solid pirouettes, and of course that's very, very useful as well, with those pirouettes being doubled scores.
Well, I'm cruising El Paseo in my off-white coupe back 65. Oh, I'm cruising down my own street, and my hoopty says to me, you better hang on to your bench seat. I'm gonna take you for a ride, and I'll let you know when it comes, when it comes. I'll let you know, but don't.
Again, I think potentially the horse just gave him the PF very quickly as he started asking for the transition, and Daniel sits very calm and he just rides it where it is. Mark of a very, very competent, controlled rider who understands all of the moving pieces. And that is going to give us a Danish 1-2. It is going to be also a combination best, and it could be just over 74% for Daniel Bachmann-Andersen and Flash Gordon. A very good test, and as we said right from the get-go, it could be that this partnership, this team, wipe the floor with everyone else here. Denmark are absolutely the ones to beat here in Falsterbo.
En andra ryttare för Sverige. Välkommen, welcome. From Sweden, Therese Nilshagen, Navarro. En hingst för 2016 efter Negro, undan Santa Maria efter San Remo. Uppförd hos Georg Kook och ägs utav Dressurfärde, Leistingcentrum, Låtbergen.
.74 exactly for Daniel Bachmann-Andersen and Flash Gordon, a combination best to go into the lead with us here in Falsterbo and giving us a Danish 1-2 at the moment. Beata Söderberg and Talento scoring a 67 as the first to go for Sweden, and we go on now to the second Swedish rider, Therese Nilshagen and Navarro. This will be the combination that takes us up to the short judges break. So absolute storming test there moments ago from Daniel Bachmann-Andersen for Denmark. What can Sweden do in reply here with Therese Nilshagen and Navarro? Paris and Tokyo Olympian with Dante Veltino. Team bronze at the Gothenburg and the Rottenburg 2017-2019 European Championships. This horse, Navarro, the youngest horse we've seen so far at 10 years old, actually part of the Swedish team in the Nations Cup earlier on this summer at Lier, and scored over 70% in Grand Prix, and that is what Sweden will be hoping for today. As you can see, already off to a very, very positive start. Therese still getting, significant numbers of 7.5s and stuff. This is just dropped back to a tiny bit below the combinations best of 72.9, but still in a very, very strong position as they just come to the conclusion of the walk section of their program and get set for that moment of upward transition to Passage, worth its own mark out of 10 at M, and then into this Passage Piaf Tour. Really, really attractive Passage. Maybe a little bit short in front in the Piaf, but certainly you can see the horse sitting and bearing the weight behind as well. Really nice, smooth two-tempi changes again. Yeah, one of the judges certainly giving that an 8, and rightly so. And does a nice job of just opening the horse up as well, because, a lot of riders are quite timid about that extended canter, especially in the middle, because there's a lot of work still to do. You don't just want to let the horse boil over. This is all very, very solid here. Most movements coming in with 1 or 2 8s from the judges. Unfortunately, just getting muddled quite early on there in the 1 tempis, and that makes a big, big difference now from a combination dallying with a personal best to dropping down to about 71. Super pirouette. Two very, very good pirouettes, and they are going to be valuable because they're both doubled as well. Not quite enough to bring them really back up into the mix here, but Therese Nilshagen and Navarro, it's a real party piece for them, clearly. But it also just shows how one error can suddenly make a big, big difference in the shape of this competition here in the Grand Prix for the FEI Dressage Nations Cup. Last Piaf now for Therese Nilshagen and Navarro, the number 2 for the Swedish team. And taking us up to the break here in Falsterbo, it is the number 2, as I say, for the Swedish team, Therese Nilshagen and Navarro. I'll see whether they are going to get close to their combination best of 72.9. I think the error is just going to keep them a tiny bit too far away, but some real highlights there, not least those canter pirouettes for the Swedish Olympian. So 72.065 going into second place. Even if they had scored a new best, as was possible at one stage, they would still be sitting in second place. But it's the points that matter as well in terms of the team result. But it means that Therese Nilshagen splits the difference between the first two Danish riders, Daniel Bachmann Andersen and Anna Zibridsen, who hold first and third as we go into the break. Denmark on 144, ahead of Sweden on 139, Netherlands on 137, very, very close between the Netherlands and Germany there on 137.8. To say a short break here in Falsterbo. We will be back at 32 minutes past the hour for the next contender, the third rider rotation for our teams from Netherlands, Germany, Denmark and Sweden here in Falsterbo. Hope you'll come back and join us then. Welcome back to Falsterbo, where Denmark are our current leaders in the FEI Dressage Nations Cup after 2 riders. Let's see how it all plays out now in the 3rd and 4th rider rotation. Our 4 teams here. Germany still looking set to gallop away with the FEI Dressage Nations Cup series this year, not least with their attendance at every single leg, but also impressive victories at home at Hagen and across the border at Fontainebleau in France. Individually, it is Daniel Bachmann-Andersen and Flash Gordon who lead on 74% in our Grand Prix. And of course, these 16 contenders will go on to the 5-star special and or freestyle tomorrow. Robin Bernowski, the best of the Dutch at the moment, sitting in individual 4th position on a 69.870 personal best, an improving personal best, having recently set a new PB at Rotterdam. Marisha Dijkman is the 3rd member of the Dutch team, just coming down the centre line to start her Grand Prix here with us with Beaujolais. A Grand Prix horse since this time last year, and contenders in the World Cup qualifiers over the winter at Gothenburg, and already with some World Cup results this year at Brno in the Czech Republic. Presenting a nice picture there across the short end of the ring as they set up for these 2 steep half passes. Our judges for the Grand Prix: Clive Halsell of Great Britain, our judge at E, Kurt Christensen of Denmark at H, Ulrike Niebler is the president today at C from Germany, Alexandra Laceda-Leo of Brazil is our judge at M, and Magnus Ringmark of Sweden is our judge on the other long side at B. So this is going to be a first team appearance at any level, youth or seniors, in this Nations Cup here for Marisha Dijkman. So it did break 70% in Grand Prix when they took the win in the May edition of Lear. So high 68s, just over 70 would be the promise on paper that they offer to their team. It's a little bit over-energetic, this walk. You can see there's a kind of an element of like a little bit of a jog every so often. So the idea of creating energy and activity into it is just manifesting in a slightly a way that's not quite what we're looking for in the extended walk. The collected walk is also going to sit there about 6.5. Just looking for the quality again. There's a little bit of tension, a little bit of stiffness to the walk. Very, very crisp transitions. The Piaf, of course, especially in comparison to Daniel Bachmann-Andersen's just recently, could show a little bit more. But I think a very, very solid basis of Piaf passage and the transition there for the Grand Prix level for Marisha Dijkman. just see she really changed her position quite dramatically. After the first change, she just leant right back to just try and hold the horse, because I think the horse just became a little bit keen and heavy in the hand to get on with things. And of course, you know, when you run through your control and your balance, then it's so easy to miss one of those changes. So a little bit of a fluff of the change there at the end of the extended canter, and that is very, very expensive. You know, we're looking at 2s and 3s from our judges there. So we're watching Marisha riding. Here you see the average of 2.6 on your screen. Riding the zigzag and setting up for the 15 1/10 piece. Incredibly short and controlled. I mean, they were done practically before she reached the center line. So putting the canter 2 behind them with those 2 canter pirouettes. Again, you know, we could be seeing a little bit more for a 7, a 7.5, but, you know, executing them and keeping their margins there. We're not quite at the 68, 69 they might have hoped for. But if this Piaf Passage comes together here and they could move back up a little closer to 67, that wouldn't be a bad place to be for this third rider for the Dutch team. Of course, the Dutch and Germans here bringing quite different teams to Denmark and Sweden. Denmark and Sweden looking at this as their final observation for the World Championships. Netherlands and Germany with their teams already selected for Aachen. So is it going to get just over 67%, or are we going to be just knocking on that as a ceiling with a high 66? We shall see. Marisha Dijkman and Beaujolais completing their test. Yeah, you see the struggles they had with that flying change over in the corner before coming up the center line for the next movement. So that was a big chink, unfortunately, in the scoring of this partnership. And overall 66-7, 6-1, 9th position for Beaujolais and Marisha Dijkman as the third rider then for our team from the Netherlands. So 204 is the score now of the first 3 riders for the Netherlands. Patrick van der Meer's team that will finish with Marie-José Cadiz and limited edition here in a few minutes' time. So third team rider then for Germany, Leonie Richter, the youth championship medalist for Germany in the past and produced a lot of horses to the World Young Horse Championships. Leone and this horse, Lord Europe. Just a Grand Prix partnership since March of this year. This will be their 4th show, their first CDIO, but they did actually contest the 5-star at Hamburg. Scored over 70% at Hamburg in the Grand Prix there at 5-star level. And actually have never scored under 70% in Grand Prix. So hopefully a useful score here for Germany. Keeping that margin, that average above 70%, and as you see at the moment, that's worth a decent ranking. 3rd place for Leone. And if they do stay there, they would only be the 4th rider and 1st German rider to score over 70% here today in Falsterbo. This is a nice extended walk as well. You know, you compare it back to the previous horse where there was just that little bit of busyness. Again, just resolutely holding just above the 70% line. Excellent set of 2 tempies there just a moment ago. And these half passes coming off well as well for Leonie Richter. So having picked up a 9 for the 2 tempies, do the 1 tempies come off as well? They are nice. They're very, very correct, very forward. She's letting them travel and flow. They cover the ground and the arena well positioned. And even just that flying change coming off really nicely. It gets up in the air. And that flying change is actually, worth pretty much a mark in its own right. It's full mark out of 10. So it's worth concentrating on. But, I mean, of course, very, very difficult on such a busy center line when you have the two pirouettes as well. Final center line to become the best of the Germans here. As I say, almost wherever they end up, Germany, I think, are assured of series victory in the Nations Cup, already on 44 points after the first 4 of the 5 legs. And they can't get less than 9 points here today. The nearest competing challengers are the Netherlands. I say a win for the Netherlands today could propel them up to a podium result. So too could it for Sweden. But Germany are not going to let the win out of their grasp too easily. Putting one onto the individual podium at the moment now with only our 4th score over 70%. We'll get the exact detail in just a moment. But Leonie Richter and Lord Europe become the best of the Germans now as the 3rd to go. So the team situation then for Germany. Germany go into the lead at the moment on 2:08, just in front of the Netherlands. But of course, the 3rd score still to come for Denmark and Sweden. So does it continue? Denmark with a team we felt on paper you absolutely had to beat, and even still looking at the individual rankings, in the top 4, the first 2 Danish riders both over 70%. Daniel Bachmann-Andersen leading overall with Flash Gordon on 74.0. So Naja Abo-Slot and Favor Gersdorf come forward as the 3rd for Denmark. It's a very positive, attractive start, making the judges sit up and really pay attention to them. Naja and Favor Gersdorf, part of the Danish team that won bronze last year at Crozet at Jiva Hill for the European Championships. Say the Danes haven't participated in the Nations Cup this year before this leg here at Falsterbo. This partnership travelled out to the CHI at Doha Al Shakab this spring, scored 72% in the Grand Prix for a podium result there. Do you feel like the 70% is nailed on? This is a partnership that have at their best scored 73. Good piaffe, good transitions as well, and you know the head and neck carriage staying up, it's not coming down and tucking back into the horse's chest as they ask for the collection in piaffe, so holding the self-carriage and the overall outline very, very nicely. Yeah, there's two tempies just unfortunately coming apart a little bit, and it's so difficult for this partnership because they are just over 70%. So when something goes wrong and you're going to get 4s and 5s like that for the two tempies, it is going to have a real downward impact on the score, just bumping along above 70, 71%. It doesn't let it hold her back though, because Nadia really opens the throttles for that extended canter. And if anything, you know, slightly like Isabelle Werth, when we see her when something goes wrong and she's backed into a corner, she comes out fighting for the next movement for a 12, let alone a 10. That's kind of what Nadia's done here as well. She's ridden up to the next movements and really grasped them. You know, maybe not as exuberant, as powerful as she might have ridden them in plan A, but my goodness, they were accurate. So final centre line back above 71%. And again, Piaf Passage has been pretty strong for this pair. You see that the judges at E and B are going to see that it comes in quite early, but I think the judges at the top end of the ring are going to see that she keeps super straightness. So Denmark are going to be 3 for 3 over 70% here and in the mix. And now 3 of our top 5 will be for Denmark as well. As I said, they have to be the ones that you think everyone else has to try and beat here at Falsterbo, and so the sport has proven throughout the afternoon. Just one more to see in the third rider rotation, and that is going to be our next to go for Sweden. $71,935, worth third position for Naja Arbo-Slot and Feve Gerstoff in the individual ranking of this Grand Prix. And from a team perspective, that is going to make Denmark be out in front on 216, a 70, a 74 and a 71 coming together for them so far, with Catherine Laudrup de Voer and Mount St. John Freestyle, of course, still to come. Ulrika Niveler, our judge at C, rings the bell then for Anita Roslund. Anita the third to go for Sweden with Fontenelle. The 11-year-old Fontenelle has actually only made a Grand Prix debut here 12 months ago, and that was one of their most recent runs at Grand Prix. They also ran in the four-star indoor Grand Prix at the Strawberry Arena for the Sweden International Horse Show. So 67% is their best score previously. But as we've been saying, the national results, of course, and the team observation trials, etc. They're not all international competitions. Every single horse is going to have a lot more experience than its international record would necessarily say. Little bit quick, resistant and hurried there in terms of the rein back, but it might also just be a question of just getting it done. It might not necessarily ever be a party piece for this pair, and no point getting too stressed or fussed about it. Yeah, I wondered whether he was anticipating the Piaf, but in fact just got his eye on something maybe there. So unfortunately the Piaf is going to come up as an almost not performed, so too the transitions, which is going to really see the score hemorrhage. You see it there dropping down into the 50s.
I hear you breathing in, another day began.
We're pleased to have the Piaf Passage behind them for a moment or two as they get their canter work really underway here.
Dreams are fading now. I've been keeping my
They're dropping into quite a secure bit of canter work here as well. This is pretty much universally sevens across our 5 judges. Yeah, it's going to be very, very tough to really make it back from that almost non-executed first Piaf and its associated transitions. Bad zigzags coming around here, ready for the 1 10-piece. The 2 10-piece went well for the pair. Just missing early there, unfortunately, and even though it finished in good quality, you know, the 1 missed one means that the judges are stuck down at 4s and 5s. Important pirouette because of the doubling coefficient. Just missing a change there across the X mark of the arena as well, and again an important moment because it is just a single snapshot for a mark out of 10. So get it right, it's good; get it wrong, and it really, really is harmful. The real focus, of course, from the judges on this final Piaf, and actually, you know, nice bit of solid work there because, and if you could replicate that all the way through, you'll be looking at a score probably just over 70 than just over 60 here. So a tough go for Anita Rosland and Fontenelle, but Fontenelle, you know, pretty inexperienced at the level. No Grand Prix starts since November of last year in terms of the international calendar, and just the 1 Grand Prix result actually from here at Falsterbo last summer at the 3-star level on their record. You just get the reverse angle there of that moment in the Piaf down at the A end of the arena. Anita Rosland and Fontenelle scoring 60.826. Sweden, therefore, on the third rider rotation, just dropping a little bit behind. It was so close between the teams earlier on. Now about a 4-point difference between Sweden and Netherlands. 4 more points up to Germany, and then 8 points between Germany and Denmark after 3 riders. Final team rider then for the Netherlands, very Jose Callis and limited edition. Nations Cup partnership for the Netherlands this year at Fontainebleau. Also travelled out to that CHI 5-star in Doha, Qatar at the beginning of the year. Actually, quite a lot of Nations Cup experience in the 2025 season. They were on the teams at Compiègne, at Lier, and also at Rotterdam. A partnership we also saw recently in action at the 5-star at Hamburg, and that 5-star tour from Hamburg, all in the archive on Clip My Horse. So too the competition from Rotterdam this summer as well. Mary Jose Callis and limited edition. Really wowing down the first centre line when we look at the scores. A couple of 8s in from our judges. And actually really setting themselves up for a very, very strong basis for the rest of the test here with the scoring they're bringing in and the early trot work. Little bit of, you know, change of direction, a little bit of swing in the half pass, and this is also just looking a little bit directional rather than the horse holding its frame through the back and being a little bit more lateral. So those half passes are the first scores to really average out below 70. So the hold ended up squaring up. It's quite early. From the camera angle we can see quite clearly, you know, the C marker was very much in front of the horse's nose still. There's a nice swing and move. There's certainly a lot of elevation in the passage. Good transition, a little bit difficult for the horse to have the strength to hold the rhythm and the activity right the way through the full 12 to 15 steps needed for the Piaffe. Again, maybe a little bit disappointing there with that Piaffe. It just had to really need to be picked up and just engaged a tiny bit more for those upper end marks. We're still sitting, though, just knocking on the door of 70%. And actually for this partnership, 69.2 has been their personal best. Good 2s, 7s across the judges. Yeah, another very, very solid line of tempi changes there. You see the average 7.3 and executing these pirouettes to a good standard as well. This has not just the potential to become a new personal best here, but it could just go over 70%. The pirouettes will really help with their doubling coefficient. There's one last piaffe as well. We're at 69.4 with the second pirouette. So PBs are nice, but to see somebody go into, it is essentially the next level to start being 70% in Grand Prix. And this partnership have been edging closer and closer to it. Really nice passage coming into that piaffe. The piaffe holds its own. I don't think they're quite going to get there for 70%, but we are going to see a new personal best here for the fourth and final rider for the Dutch team here in our FEI Dressage Nations Cup Grand Prix. A little bit off square, you see them losing straightness, having started a little bit wide behind in that final halt. So we're seeing 6s and 7s there, so it's a little chink, a little detraction there at the last moment, but overall a very, very strong test from the final horse and rider pair for the Netherlands. Maria Jose then with a 69.609, as we've always been suggesting, a new personal best for her and limited edition. They will drop Marisha Dijkman's score, and therefore it is going to be 207 for the Netherlands in the final score here. The Netherlands, of course, the first team to complete their performance in the FEI Dressage Nations Cup. So final team rider for Germany is Moritz Treffinger. Very exciting young talent for Germany. Moritz, of course, this time last year at the U25 Championships, which of course going on at the moment from Pilisasfalau in Hungary, and that's also available on FEI TV, powered by Clip My Horse. Moritz, a World Cup finalist this year, finishing top 10 in the freestyle at Fort Worth with this horse, Feeder Dance, having been a team gold and individual gold U25 medalist last year at Kronberg in Germany in the U25s. Feeder Dance, of course, we know well, having previously been with Australia's Simona Pearce right the way through to World Championships and World Cup finals. Moritz taking on the ride in 2023 as one of his U25 horses. As I say, we saw them this year with some very good results in the World Cup at Amsterdam and Neumünster to make their way on to those finals in Fort Worth. So comfortably trending above 70%, sitting top 5 at the moment. It's a partnership, 71.4 has been their Grand Prix best. Again, you just see a little bit of anticipation there, so you're not getting that crisp upward transition to passage. And again, the devil in the details so much in dressage. Very strong piaffe passage work just coming into the canter, and again, nothing below a 7. We're starting to see a good few 8s coming in the canter work here for the partnership as well. Very, very solid 110 piece. Again, I think the judges might just like to see a little bit more forward thinking, a little bit more flamboyance to those, but they're going to get 7s across the board. Good pirouette, a little bit stuck the last couple of strides, just trying to exit and get down this center line. So frustrating, you know, here it's 70.75, 70.8%, 71.5 has been their PB, and they just can't quite get there, and it's just half a mark here, half a mark there, again and again across the 33 movements of the Grand Prix test. You know, it is still going to be up with the leaders of our Grand Prix on over 70%, but about half of our field here of 16 are going to end up over 70%. Still Daniel Bachmann-Andersen leading on 74.0, but certainly a rider we already have and will continue to see a lot more of, and that is Moritz Treffinger and his World Cup Finals horse FEI Dressage. So just waiting for the score for Moritz and therefore for the German team as well. Leonie Richter on 71.1%, sits in 4th place for Germany. And I think Moritz is going to go just behind that, so he'll be the 2nd highest ranked German contender. Six riders, all scoring over 70%. And of course, 2 more to come for Sweden and Denmark, and we would expect both of those to be comfortably over 70% as well. Patrick Kittel and Catherine Laudrup-Dufour. So the team score for Germany then is going to tot up to a 2-1-1, dropping the score for Evelyn Egger on 68. So Helen Lange-Hanneberg, Leonie Richter and Moritz Treffinger, the counting scores for Germany. So here, one of the ones we've been looking forward to seeing here, Catherine Laudrup-Dufour and Mount St. John Freestyle. I say Denmark have looked absolutely imperious in this, their first and only FEI Dressage Nations Cup appearance of the year, and a show that they are using to refine and select their World Championships team for Aachen. But it would be difficult to suspect a team that wouldn't include Catherine, Rio, Tokyo, Paris Games, Mount St. John Freestyle. Actually, the individual winner of the ranking in the Grand Prix special at the Olympic Games in Paris, helping Denmark to that team silver at the Paris Olympic Games. The overall winner of the Grand Prix individual ranking at last summer's Europeans, contributing to Denmark's team bronze. European freestyle silver in their own right as well. So here we see for the first time score over 80% in the running scores. And actually, you know, we talk so much about how it's difficult to maintain scores during the halt and rein back, you know, 9s and 8s for Catherine and Mount St. John Freestyle. So clear, deliberate, so much height as well offered in that piaffe. Strong transitions as well, very, very good passage as you'd expect. And again, just looking up the ring at that walk, it's just an overall incredibly pleasing picture of exactly how you want to see a horse working, moving, being presented. Maybe not the exemplary quality that we saw in the earlier piaffe, but still very, very strong, and we're still comfortably over 80% here. In fact, we're very nearly at 82%. And we've seen no shortage of 9s. We have seen a 10 as well for some of the passage work just coming into the canter as well. This is just an absolute masterclass in the run-up to the World Championships for Mount St. John Freestyle and Catherine Laudrup de Four. Quite the gauntlet being laid down for Patrick Kittle in touchdown here as well. I'm not sure quite whether he's going to be able to play at this level, but it won't be for the want of trying from the long-time Swedish number one. And just look at the rhythm and balance of that, you know, again, just to the eye, it just looks right. 10 a moment ago for one of the pirouettes. Three tens for this passage as they start to judge the Piaf making the transition here. Again, you know, B and E will see that it's a little bit early. You know, we're starting to get into personal best country. 84 has been this partnership's personal best. We're not going to get there, but what a test. Listen to that reaction. Dressage fans here in Falsterbo, whether it is their own or it has to be one of our visitors from Denmark, just across the Ottesen Sound on 83.7. Catherine Laudrup to 4 and Mount St. John Freestyle have turned in the dressage test of the day so far and go well into the lead. (83.718) for Catherine Laudrup to 4 and Mount St. John Freestyle. And that means that Denmark, I think, are going to be unassailably out in front on 2:29. Let's see what Sweden can do with the final shot in their arsenal here in just a moment or two. World Cup champion Patrick Kittel and touchdown. So Patrick and touchdown, World Cup champions in Riyadh. They've, of course, been Olympians together, championship competitors together. Contested the top 12 final last year at Frankfurt in the Festhallen. We've seen them in World Cup action with great results this year at Amsterdam, at Gothenburg, and, of course, going to yet another finals for a top 5 in Fort Worth. What's interesting is that this is pretty much Patrick's only championship Grand Prix level horse at the moment. We're so used to seeing him with a couple of different horses at a time. But over the latter half of 2025 and into 2026, it has been all on the international results about touchdown. And obviously being here in Falsterbo, this is the horse he has in contention for those World Championships at Aachen. Championship medalist, World Cup champion, Olympian Patrick Kittel, 78.261 has been the best score for this partnership, which means that unless something suddenly changes dramatically, Catherine Laudrup to 4 and Mount St. John Freestyle are our individual winners today. Not a bad halt and rail back. You get a little bit of sense of the horse trailing the feet across the ground rather than really stepping up off the ground. But again, it's overall just going to be a nice package. It's not going to get less than a 7. And we're seeing plenty of 8s coming in, smattered across the judges. I mean, you know, the steep half passes were getting 3, 4 of the 5 judges giving 8s at times. So, you know, Patrick is fighting for every mark here. Get a smart walk here from Touchdown. He's getting set for this upward transition to Passage. 14 years old now. Actually feels like he's been around the block for a long time, but he's still absolutely in his prime. Just not quite getting the quality he'd like for that PF. Good 2 tempies, and you know, Patrick's somebody we usually see really go for it in the extended, and he gets Touchdown's frame nicely extended out and open there, balancing back up for the flying change, single change at the end of the line, which is its own mark. Yes, the canter around from K to A is also included, but in reality the mark is mostly about that single flying change, but it is the point I'm trying to make separate to the extended canter. Again, positively received by the judges, that sequence of canter half pass zigzag. You know, you talk about covering your ground, you know, and how far each of those changes is traveling. If he'd had to do 2 more, he wouldn't have had space on that long diagonal. So just a little bit in arrears of Daniel Bachmann-Andersen, 74.00, 73.459. Now a good PF with its doubling coefficient here over the final centre line could bring him closer. I think it's just a little bit too much to ask with so few movements left for him to just get in front of Daniel Bachmann-Andersen. But I mean, we're talking about 3 very serious championship riders there, all in a row on our leaderboard. Catherine Laudrup de Four, Daniel Bachmann-Andersen and Patrick Kittel likely to go into 3rd. Little bit of a struggle there with the transitions is where you would probably leave the problem, though I think actually it's been marked as the PF. But in any sense, it is just a little bit of an expensive moment on the final centre line, but doesn't look like it has impacted the ranking for Patrick Kittel and Touchdown. always enjoys showing off his horses, and I'd say nowhere more so than on home soil. The brilliant Swedish shows, the likes of the indoor at the Scandinavium in Gothenburg. Looking forward to hosting another edition of the World Cup Finals next spring, and here outdoors at Falsterbo. So Patrick and touchdown, as I say, not looking like they're going to just overtake Daniel Bachmann-Andersen and Flash Gordon for the second place. They will be on the podium, and we'll have our Nations Cup team result for Falsterbo, and also our result over the season here as well in just a few moments' time. So Patrick Idlin, touchdown in their own right, scoring 73.174%. And as we suspected all along, third place then for the Swedish Olympian. So Sweden are going to take second place here. 2:12.609 for Sweden in the final analysis, dropping the score from Anita Roslund and Fontenelle, and counting those two scores over 70%, and Bertha Söderberg and Talentos 67. So the result of the Nations Cup here then sees Denmark and Sweden take the top two spots. 229 though placed 2-1-12. It's a very different country between 1 and 2. Close between Sweden and Germany for second and third, and the Netherlands then not too far off the pace on 207 in that fourth spot. So that concludes the FEI Dressage Nations Cup Series for the year. Germany are going to be the overall series champions with 55 points, including the 11 points picked up for a podium here today in Falsterbo. And Denmark taking the win in their first and only appearance of the season. Sweden moving 13 points up for a completion score of 24, which is going to push them in front of Great Britain on the rankings, and the Netherlands also moving up the order with 9 more points on their score, putting them on 22. So that is going to see them top 5 in the final analysis. So a super season starting in Wellington in Florida in February and concluding here by the Baltic in Falsterbo in a sunny July Swedish show of the FEI Dressage Nations Cup Series. We hope you've enjoyed it, and of course lots more to come from Falsterbo with our Grand Prix Special and Grand Prix Freestyle tomorrow for you on Clip My Horse, and of course across the weekend there in the grass ring in the centre, the 5-star jumping action as well, including tomorrow's Rolex Grand Prix. Today the feature on Clip My Horse with my colleague Stephen Wild is going to be the Falsterbo Derby. We hope you'll tune in and enjoy all the action from Falsterbo this weekend.